My wife action. My wife asked me to disappear at my own company's gala.
She leaned close to my ear, her smile still fixed for the cameras, and whispered, "My new boss is here. Please don't embarrass me." Then, without waiting for a response, she subtly pointed toward the service hallway. The one meant for staff, not for guests. It took a second for the meaning to sink in. This was my company's gala. A black tie event celebrating 25 years of growth, held in the flagship hotel I had built from the ground up. Investors, board members, longtime partners, everyone who mattered was in that room, and my wife had just asked me to disappear. I nodded once and walked away. The hallway smelled of cleaning chemicals and hot food. My polished shoes echoed on the tiled floor as I passed servers who recognized me but looked away, unsure of what they were witnessing. I loosened my tie and leaned against the wall near stacked equipment cases, listening to the distant music and laughter bleeding through the doors. From the corner of my eye, I watched her glide back into the ballroom. She moved with a practiced confidence, slipping seamlessly to her boss's side, resting a hand on his arm as she laughed at something he said. He looked at her with a certain admiration, maybe even ownership, like a man who believed he'd just replaced someone obsolete. She believed that too. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Most people assume that stepping back from daily operations means stepping away entirely. They confuse absence with irrelevance. They forget that foundations don't just vanish because the building gets taller. I sent one message, short, precise. I attached a time-stamped photo taken earlier that evening, capturing her gesture toward the service exit and his approving smile in the background. Then I invoked a clause buried deep in contracts no one ever reads carefully enough. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and left the hotel. I didn't go home. I drove to my old office instead, the one in the first property I'd ever purchased, long before private jets and five-star ratings. The building was quiet at that hour, lit only by emergency lights and the soft glow from the harbor outside. I sat at my desk and opened a drawer I'd kept locked for years. Inside were documents labeled contingency. When I married her, my lawyer had insisted on protections. Not just personal ones, but professional. Love is emotional, he'd said. Business is structural, never confuse the two. I hadn't planned to use any of it. But planning and hoping are not the same thing. By morning, the gala was already being discussed in hushed tones. Why had I left early? Why through the service exit? Why had she taken center stage beside the CEO instead of her husband? At 8 a.m., the emergency board meeting began. I arrived early, calm, prepared. The room filled with familiar faces, some curious, some concerned. The CEO arrived last, his confidence stretched thin, his eyes darting as if he already knew the ground was unstable beneath him. When I stood to speak, no one interrupted. I laid out the facts, no accusations, no emotion, just evidence. Video footage, internal messages. Proof that what had happened the night before wasn't a misunderstanding, but the final step in a longer plan to erase me quietly once my usefulness had apparently ended. Silence followed. Then the questions came, fast and sharp. Who authorized this? When did this begin? Why were these protections triggered? Each answer I gave tightened the atmosphere in the room. By the end of the meeting, decisions were made unanimously. Suspensions, investigations, access revoked. The very man she'd tried so hard to impress sat frozen, realizing far too late that charisma doesn't outweigh governance. She called me an hour later. Her voice shook, caught somewhere between anger and panic. She said I'd overreacted, that I'd misunderstood, that we were married and we should handle this privately. "You didn't treat me like your husband last night," I replied evenly. "You treated me like an inconvenience." There was a pause. Then her tone changed. "Do you know what this will do to me?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Yes," I said. "The same thing you thought you were doing to me." She didn't apologize. She asked for damage control. And that told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few weeks, the full truth surfaced. Financial irregularities. Hidden communications. Decisions made behind closed doors that should never have been made at all. What I had first thought was simple disrespect turned out to be a deep-seated betrayal, layered with cold calculation. She was removed from her position. Her reputation unraveled faster than she could have ever expected. The industry is small, memories are long. The divorce papers followed shortly after. She didn't fight them. With investigations looming, discretion had suddenly become very important to her. Months later, I stood on the balcony of that same hotel, watching another event unfold below. Different faces, different leadership. The company was intact. Stronger, even. I thought back to that moment in the hallway, the whisper, the gesture, the assumption that I was finished. She thought power was about proximity, about standing next to the right person at the right time. She was wrong. True power is about what you build so well that it doesn't collapse when someone tries to push you out of your own story. I wasn't embarrassed that night. I was reminded. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more. Your support means the world. See you next time.